It was a night of glamour and celebration. Crystal chandeliers glittered over a crowd of hundreds. Champagne flowed freely. Laughter echoed through the grand Hartley estate, bouncing off marble floors and gilded walls. On the surface, everything was perfect. A night to remember, a story for the social pages, just another evening in the life of Isabella Hartley. 17 years old, the only daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city, beautiful, charming, adored by everyone who met her. Isabella had it all: beauty, privilege, influence. But as often happens in lives that seem flawless, perfection can hide danger. And danger often comes from where you least expect it. One moment, she was laughing, posing for pictures, sharing jokes with friends, smiling at the camera. And the next, nothing. An empty glass left behind, a single high heel abandoned in the hallway, a door slightly ajar, letting the night air creep inside, and perhaps something else. At first, no one noticed. A friend thought she had gone to the restroom. Someone else assumed she was taking a phone call. But as the minutes stretched, she did not return. Whispers grew louder. Unease spread like wildfire. Something was wrong, and panic, subtle at first, began to grip everyone in the room. The Hartleys were frantic. Eleanor's eyes scanned the crowd, calculating, commanding. Richard's hands shook as he fumbled with his phone, calling security, calling friends, trying to make sense of the impossible. Their daughter, their only child, had disappeared. In a room full of people. A child of privilege, surrounded by hundreds. Gone. The search began quietly, methodically. Then, with rising panic, the mansion erupted into chaos. Staff ran from room to room. Guests peered behind curtains under tables. Security cameras were checked again and again, but the harder they looked, the more impossible it became to understand. How could a girl vanish without a trace? A phone left behind, a journal abandoned, a glass untouched. Small things, seemingly meaningless, but in hindsight, glaring signs. Clues that the night would not end as anyone expected, that something sinister was unfolding right under everyone's eyes. How does a girl vanish from a room full of people? And the answers lie closer than anyone suspects. Someone in that mansion knew more than they said. Someone was waiting. And the story that night was only beginning. To understand the disappearance of Isabella Hartley, you need to understand the world she lived in. A world of wealth, privilege, and carefully curated appearances. Glittering parties, luxury cars, and opulent mansions. But behind the sparkle, tension often simmered quietly in the shadows. Isabella Hartley, 17 years old, artistic, smart, and already a social media influencer with thousands of followers. She had a public life almost as polished as her private one, yet even in a house of luxury, she sometimes felt trapped. Trapped by expectations, by appearances, and by a family whose love, while real, often came with strings attached. Eleanor Hartley, her mother, elegant, commanding, a philanthropist admired by society, loving, yes, but controlling. Eleanor wanted what she believed was best for Isabella. Sometimes that meant guidance. Other times, it meant rules that felt suffocating. In a mansion built on perfection, a single act of rebellion could have consequences no one anticipated. Richard Hartley, her father, billionaire businessman, rarely home, often distracted by board meetings, mergers, and maintaining the Hartley name. Richard loved his daughter, yet he struggled to see her for who she truly was. For him, success and image mattered above all. A lesson Isabella would carry with her into every room she entered, every interaction she had, every smile she shared. And then there were the staff, the butler, the housekeeper, the security team. Silent observers of family life, loyal in appearance, yet each with their own secrets, their own stories. People who noticed more than the family realized. People whose small actions, later, would become pieces of a puzzle no one could yet solve. Isabella's friends, too, played a role. Some genuinely cared, some envied her. Some sought connection, others opportunity. In a house where privilege and status governed interactions, loyalty was often tested, and the true nature of friendships, sometimes revealed only in crisis. Flashbacks to past birthdays, family dinners, and quiet moments in the Hartley estate paint a complex picture. Laughter and love, yes, but also tension and subtle conflicts. Rules imposed for protection sometimes felt like restrictions. Love sometimes came with expectations. And in such a house, secrets could fester, unnoticed, until the moment they became dangerous. As Isabella prepared for the gala, unaware of the storm to come, the stage was set. Every character, every relationship, every subtle tension would play a role in what happened next. And the closer someone was to her, the more we would later question their motives, their loyalty, and their truth. In the world of the Hartleys, appearances were everything. But when a girl disappears from a room full of people, those appearances can deceive. And sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones you trust the most. The Hartley estate sparkled that night. 7 grand rooms, each more opulent than the last. Crystal chandeliers cast light across marble floors. Guests in tuxedos and gowns drifted from room to room, champagne in hand, polite laughter floating over the music. Outside, the gardens glimmered under soft fairy lights. From the outside, it was the perfect gala, a celebration of wealth, family, and status. But inside, something unseen was already stirring. Isabella Hartley moved through the crowd with ease, smiling, laughing, taking selfies, chatting with friends. She was the center of attention, the girl everyone admired, the young woman who had grown up in privilege and knew how to navigate it. Yet even in the midst of the celebration, there were subtle shifts, moments of hesitation, glances cast at shadows, a hand brushing against the railing of the terrace a second too long. Moments the cameras would later capture, but no one noticed then. 8:42 p.m., Isabella walked toward the West Wing, laughing with a friend she hadn't seen in weeks. 8:55 p.m., she stepped onto the terrace, camera in hand, photographing the gardens, the lights, the glittering city in the distance. 9:05 p.m., she returned to the ballroom. And then, she was gone. Just like that. One moment she was there, vibrant and alive. The next, nothing. At first it seemed harmless. A friend said, "She probably went to the restroom." Another whispered, "Maybe she's taking a call." But the minutes stretched. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to panic. Isabella Hartley, the golden girl of the city, was nowhere to be found. The search began quietly. The butler checked the West Wing. The housekeeper scoured the kitchen and service areas. Security swept the terrace and gardens. Eleanor's voice rose, commanding, precise, calling out Isabella's name. Richard fumbled with his phone, dialing security, then friends, trying to make sense of the impossible. Every step, every second, stretched the tension thinner and thinner. As staff and guests searched, the first doubts began to emerge. Tiny inconsistencies in accounts, shadows in the footage, delayed responses. Each one, subtle at first, but stacking into a chilling question. Had someone inside the house played a role in her disappearance? The investigation had begun. Every lead, every statement, every message would unravel a story far more complex than anyone imagined. And somewhere in the shadows of the Hartley mansion, someone knew exactly what had happened that night, and the true story was only just beginning. By the time the police arrived, the Hartley estate had transformed from a glamorous gala into a house of tension and fear. Guests whispered in corners. Staff moved nervously through the rooms, and in the center of it all, Eleanor and Richard Hartley clung to each other, desperate for answers that did not exist. Yet. Detectives began methodically. First, interviews. Eleanor Hartley, poised yet visibly shaken, recounted the evening in painstaking detail. Every joke, every smile, every movement Isabella had made, catalogued in her memory. Richard Hartley stumbled over names and times, desperate to fill in the gaps with assumptions that made sense in a world that had suddenly become incomprehensible. Next came the staff. The butler, calm but with subtle hesitation, described his duties that evening. The housekeeper, normally precise, faltered under questioning. Security admitted gaps in camera coverage. Every statement, seemingly truthful, carried tiny inconsistencies, small cracks in a story that would soon widen into chasms. Friends of Isabella were interviewed next. Each account conflicted slightly with the others. One friend swore Isabella had been laughing on the terrace at 9:05 p.m. Another insisted she was still in the ballroom, camera in hand. A third friend remembered a hushed conversation, almost secretive, with someone off to the side. No two stories aligned perfectly, and detectives learned quickly that in those small discrepancies might lie either truth or deception. Then investigators turned to Isabella's personal effects. The artifacts of a teenage life lived in the shadows of luxury. Her diary revealed private thoughts, hopes, and fears she had not shared with anyone. Text messages and social media DMs painted a complicated picture of relationships, rivalries, and unspoken tensions. Some messages hinted at jealousy, others at forbidden attachments, and a few were downright cryptic, as though Isabella had feared she was being watched. From these digital breadcrumbs, detectives began to unravel a web of motives: jealous friends, relatives coveting inheritance, staff with grudges. The world Isabella had seemed to inhabit flawlessly was far more complicated than anyone had realized. Beneath the sparkle of wealth and privilege, human emotions festered: envy, resentment, and unspoken anger, all waiting for a trigger. Conflicting witness statements only fueled the suspense: shadows seen where no one should have been, doors opening and closing without explanation, a hand resting on a railing just a fraction too long, a whispered conversation interrupted mid-sentence. Every small contradiction became a question. Who was telling the truth? And who was hiding something? Inside the mansion, family tensions escalated. Eleanor, normally composed, began to suspect that someone close to her daughter knew more than they admitted. Richard, desperate to maintain appearances, oscillated between denial and panic, sometimes blaming staff, sometimes relatives. Quiet accusations began to surface, whispered behind closed doors, and detectives watched carefully as suspicion eroded trust. Investigators also examined forensic evidence: fingerprints on glasses, cups, doors, security footage reviewed frame by frame, missing items catalogued. And among these details, a clue emerged: a footprint partially hidden behind a rug, a camera angle catching a figure lingering near Isabella's last known location. Someone familiar, someone with access, someone who could have known her routines, her habits, her secrets. And then came the red herrings: the ex-boyfriend, charming, persuasive, but with a history of late-night arguments and subtle threats; the cousin, envious of Isabella's privilege, whose small digs now seemed more pointed; staff members, previously trusted implicitly, who suddenly seemed nervous under questioning. Each presented a potential motive. Each led detectives deeper into the maze of uncertainty. Every clue seemed to point somewhere. But could it be a trap? Neighbors and teachers were interviewed. One neighbor remembered Isabella laughing in the garden days before the gala, carefree and bright. A teacher spoke of her ambition and quiet moments of reflection. Friends recounted minor jealousies, secretive conversations, fleeting disagreements. Each story added texture, emotion, and urgency. Isabella's life, her happiness, and now her very existence had become entangled in forces she could neither predict nor control. The detectives reconstructed the timeline. 8:42 p.m., West Wing, 8:55 p.m., Terrace, 9:05 p.m., last seen in the ballroom, and then vanished. Footsteps echoed in hallways. Shadows appeared in unexpected places. Texts and messages hinted at unseen meetings. Each layer of evidence teased a narrative, only for it to shift the moment investigators thought they had clarity. Who could be trusted? Who might have orchestrated this disappearance? Days passed. The puzzle became increasingly complex. Innocent behaviors appeared suspicious. Friendly gestures seemed manipulative. Every phone call, every glance, every hesitation became potential evidence. Detectives had to untangle motives from appearances, truth from deception, loyalty from betrayal. And somewhere, in the silence of the mansion, someone watched. Someone who had orchestrated events, calculated timing, and perhaps even manipulated those around Isabella to maintain the illusion of safety, until it was too late. In a house of wealth, status, and secrets, detectives realized one thing. The line between innocence and guilt was thinner than anyone imagined. And for Isabella Hartley, the people closest to her, might be hiding the most dangerous secrets of all. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Isabella Hartley pressed on. Yet the breakthrough came not from frantic searching or questioning, but from the quiet, hidden corners of her life, the spaces where she had left pieces of herself behind, her diary, her phone, objects that now held the keys to understanding what had happened that night. The diary was found tucked beneath a drawer in her bedroom, pages filled with sketches, musings, and the thoughts of a girl who lived a life under the constant gaze of privilege. At first it seemed innocent. Teenage angst, dreams of photography, social outings. But as detectives read further, subtle clues emerged. Cryptic entries that hinted at secrets Isabella had kept even from her parents. Names, cryptic symbols, unexplained meetings, someone she trusted or feared. Her phone told another story. Text messages and DMs, some casual, others urgent. Screenshots of conversations she had deleted in haste. Images, locations, times. A trail left behind, almost imperceptible, but for the careful eye, undeniable. And it was here that detectives noticed the first real inconsistencies. People who had claimed to be with Isabella that night were absent in her digital footprints. Conversations she had with staff, friends, even family, contained small, almost imperceptible hints of tension, jealousy, and secrecy. Then, the surveillance footage was re-examined. Frames that had seemed mundane were now revealing subtle movements, shadows where no one should be, doors closing just out of camera view, a hand reaching out, a figure lingering near Isabella's last known location. For the first time, the detectives saw something they hadn't seen before. A new suspect emerged, someone who had appeared trustworthy, almost invisible in the chaos, yet whose presence could not be explained. And suddenly the web of motives became more tangled, hidden rivalries within the family, old grievances held by staff, secrets Isabella had discovered in her young life. Each revelation forced a difficult truth. Perhaps no one was entirely innocent. Perhaps everyone, in some way, had contributed to the chain of events that led to her disappearance. The moral ambiguity of the case began to surface. Was it jealousy? Fear? Revenge? Or the careless negligence of those who should have protected her? Viewers, like detectives, are forced to question. Who is truly the villain? The person who acted, or the world that allowed it to happen? The lines between hero and perpetrator blurred. Evidence of betrayal emerged in the most unlikely places. A staff member who seemed loyal had left cryptic notes. A family member who appeared loving had been caught in lies. A friend's seemingly innocent actions now suggested hidden agendas. Every revelation complicated the narrative, making the truth more elusive and the stakes higher. And then the detectives realized it. The pieces fit together in a way that no one expected. The diary, the phone, the surveillance footage. Together, they revealed a pattern. A chain of decisions, small and seemingly harmless, that culminated in that night. A web of trust and deception that had quietly surrounded Isabella Hartley, enclosing her in a trap no one had foreseen. Everything you thought you knew about that night is about to unravel. Every suspect, every motive, every lie, leading to a truth that will shock even those who knew Isabella best. And as the investigation reached its climax, the line between innocence and guilt, love and betrayal, safety and danger, became impossibly thin. After weeks of investigation, countless interviews, and painstaking analysis of every detail, the truth finally emerged. Isabella Hartley had not vanished by chance. She had been lured away, manipulated by someone she trusted. Someone whose smiles had once seemed genuine, whose gestures of kindness masked a hidden agenda. The security footage, the diary entries, the cryptic messages, they all pointed to a betrayal so close it cut deeper than anyone could imagine. The perpetrator was revealed not as an outsider, but someone inside the house. A figure of trust, familiar, almost invisible in the chaos. Each small action, each subtle lie, had been part of a plan executed with chilling precision. The kidnapping was calculated, driven by jealousy and greed, and fueled by the dark undercurrents that ran through the very walls of the Hartley mansion. Isabella had been taken under the guise of care and protection, only to be hidden from the world. The emotional aftermath was profound. Eleanor Hartley, once composed and dignified, broke in ways cameras could not capture. Richard Hartley, who had prized appearances over reality, faced the harsh consequences of ignoring the small signs. Family, friends, and staff grappled with shock, guilt, and grief. Public reaction was intense. The headlines painted Isabella as a cautionary tale, a young life nearly destroyed by betrayal and privilege alike. Yet amidst the sorrow and the outrage, there were lessons in resilience and awareness. The diary pages that once revealed confusion now symbolized courage. The evidence that exposed deceit highlighted the need to question appearances. And the house itself, opulent, beautiful, seemingly perfect, became a symbol of the danger that can hide behind wealth and familiarity. Trust, it seemed, was never absolute. The police acted swiftly, legal consequences followed. Those responsible were brought to justice, but the scars, emotional, psychological, and relational, remained. Isabella returned to her family, forever changed, carrying the weight of secrets and survival. And the people around her were forced to reflect. How well do you truly know those closest to you? How carefully do you watch the shadows that linger behind familiar faces? In the end, the story of Isabella Hartley is not just a story of disappearance. It is a story of human complexity, of hidden motives, of privilege both shielding and exposing danger, of trust betrayed and innocence threatened. And as the Hartleys rebuild their lives, as Isabella begins the slow process of healing, we are left with a question that lingers long after the cameras are off and the lights dim. In a house full of people, how well do you really know the ones you love? If you've been captivated by this story, if every twist, every secret, every betrayal kept you on the edge of your seat, there's more where that came from. Subscribe now to Behind the Perfect Crime for daily investigations, shocking mysteries, and stories that challenge everything you thought you knew. Hit that like button if you were stunned by the twists. Comment below with your theories. Who did you suspect? Could you have predicted the betrayal? Share this video with friends who love suspense, who love secrets, who can't resist unraveling a mystery. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that keeps your heart racing. Join the conversation, stay connected, and remember, the truth is often stranger, darker, and closer than you think. Every view, every share, Every comment helps this channel grow and allows us to bring you more of the stories you can't forget. So don't leave now. Stick till the very end, because the next story could be waiting just around the corner and you won't want to miss a single revelation. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, in the shadows of privilege and power, nothing is ever quite what it seems.